Next up, Sameem Siddiqui.
This is only my second time reading my work aloud. Last time was also an interloop event. I did get a notification on my watch afterwards that my heart rate was way too high during it, so hopefully this time will be better. I just want to first say thank you to the Interloop for inviting me to write a response to some of these pieces. I was really excited about it. Thank you also to the gallery for hosting the space and the exhibits. Thank you to the curators for doing all the work to put these exhibits together. And lastly, and not least, thanks to the artists for sharing their time and their skill and their vulnerability with all of us with all this work. I was inspired by a lot of the work here, but there was a lot of work that was using textile to convey feeling, and I think that I didn't intentionally go into my piece doing that, but halfway through I realized like, oh, okay, the textiles are speaking to me a lot. And there's also a lot of pieces that both in the artwork itself and in the artist statements talked a lot about the relationship between land and body, and I think that definitely shows up in this work. This piece is called Infinite Weaves. When the landing gets too rough, I close my eyes and I see all the decades at once, the years folded and wrinkled in between. I can see threads of particles spooled into you like a loom and woven back out, first into me and then into Humi. You always told me to think of time as this infinite weave, pulling together loose threads of particles that sway on invisible eddies, every moment woven into the next, leaving behind tapestries of light and texture, topographies of what had happened, knots of what had been done, vibrations of what had been said. The textures change where the three of us are woven apart, where the threads of our particles disentangle. I'm afraid of these sections, but you always remind me that as we disentangle, we're woven into other threads that are eventually tangled back into ours, that we three are always connected in this weave, that nothing is ever lost. There's a section of the tapestry from the years after the war where more and more threads of people are woven into the sky, through the atmosphere, into the unnerving relative velocities of orbit, and into the razor-sharp dust of the moon. In these years, I hear Humi's voice calling me on every occasion to invite me up there, for Eids and birthdays, her wedding, her childbirths. Each time I would insist it'd be better for her to come back down to earth, literally and metaphorically, reproaching her like I was a resentful, abandoned parent. I'd hear you in my head later, your words aspirating backwards in time, reminding me to be kinder to your only daughter, to my only sister. Your voice in my memory is ventriloquy, your face in one direction, your body in another, your words ricocheting from wall to wall, impossible to track. I didn't refuse Humi's invites because I was bitter about how quick she was to accept the resettlement package and leave home. I was bitter about it, but that's not why I refused. I did worry about all these people going to the moon, all this weight being imported. I'm told that the added mass is negligible, but negligible is not quite zero, and even the smallest changes can leave one feeling that something is not quite right. I wouldn't even enjoy my time up there. I just stare back down at Earth, my eyes tracing the lines of continental shores, worrying that someone's wave will swirl the wrong way because my dumbass went to dinner with a view. But this isn't why I refuse either. Now that I've landed, I can confirm that I hate it here. It's not that I hate the moon. I don't even particularly hate being here. I just hate what they've done to the place. From a distance, the moon is this symbol of meditation, of contemplation, of peace. But the truth is, up close, it's always been a place of violence, pockmarked with bombardments, void of atmosphere, and doused in radiation. The contradictions fascinate me. So when I emerge into the arrivals area and am bathed in hospitality, I feel betrayed. This is a place where life should dissipate into the ether in moments, and yet there are hundreds of people around me, kissing and hugging their loved ones hello or goodbye. If I knew my sister at all, I'd say she didn't come here for the serenity. Humi lived her first decades surviving the chaos of war. She didn't come to the moon for its meditative appeal. She could get that on Earth now. She came to the moon to fight it, to survive where the land, instead of its people, was violently insistent that she didn't belong. It's Humi's youngest, Uzziah, that comes to greet me when I arrive. He was still growing last I saw him, in the years before Humi's diagnosis. Now he's grown, though he wears the eyes of someone who's had to grow up faster than expected. On the moon, they don't quite bury the dead. Out under the regolith, your body won't really decompose, Without an atmosphere to hold moisture and without living ecosystems to consume you, your remains would kind of just dry out. Some elect for this macabre affair, others simply elect to go back down to earth. But most, in a mix of practicality and duty, give their bodies back to the communities they live in, allowing their remains to be processed and recycled into soils used for gardening and farming within their dome cities. It's quiet when we arrive in the gardens. Uzziah settles into a bench under an alcove as I walk through the paths, scanning the plaques within the flower beds. I look through the dome and see the cloud-laced oceans of earth and remind myself I'll be home soon. I kneel onto the mossy pathway, my nose replete with the smell of jasmine. I close my eyes and run my fingertips through the moss, feeling for the year you sent us away, the year the warmongers grew ravenous and bold. Its textures vibrate into blooms along my skin. I narrate to Humi moments with you that she was too young to remember. I describe to her the static crackling of a phone, my silent whimpers. I mimic your fraying voice telling me not to worry, telling me to just look up at the moon, that somehow if we all looked up at the moon at the same time, we wouldn't be so far apart. And you were right. Despite the ocean between us in those days, in this section of the tapestry, our threads are woven closer together before they drift further apart. Before your threads disperse through the weave, before your particles are annihilated, entirely consumed by the war. The weave told me you were gone long ago, that nothing would bring your particles back together, back toward mine. I apologize to Humi for the decades I spent stitched to the earth, looking up at the moon, hoping somehow you were looking up too. I run my fingers through the weave one last time and weep, knowing that my threads are now forever alone. Thank you.